Welcome to Beyond the Picket Fence, where we talk about the untold stories of the American dream. I'm your host, Missy Stegers, and my co-host,
Max Kozlowski.
Welcome our guest today, Eric Kalla. He is owner of Avid Wealth Partners. He is an amazing man and father. He has all the integrity you could ever wish to find in someone. And he is probably one of the most goal-oriented people I know and really has mastered that concept.
Hello, everyone. We're excited to have Eric Kalla here today with Avid Wealth Advisors and learn a little bit about his journey on how he started his own firm and got to be wonderfully successful at doing what he's doing, and is a great role model, I think, for everybody to hear a little bit about, because it wasn't all easy.
To say the least, yeah. Thank you, Missy. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Good. Let's just let the audience learn a little bit about you first, Eric. So let's take you back to your childhood to today on a short journey.
Yeah.
You didn't just get to where you were overnight. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, born in Pennsylvania, spent the least amount of time there as possible. Moved to Houston when I was about 5-6 months old. Grew up all over Houston. My dad was nomadic as a kid. My grandfather was a diplomat, so he moved all over the world. And so he just kept on doing that. But we just, he worked for Continental Airlines, and we would just move around depending on what airport he was at or if he was downtown. That was pretty cool. Helped me get out of my shell and have to meet people because, the first place was I don't know, it was maybe every 5 years or so, just moving to a different school or moving around, which was awesome because I love to meet new people. But as far as big shifts there, as a kid, I wasn't really super good at sports. Loved basketball. I wasn't very good at it. And got into scouts and did all that and really loved being outdoors. And
I think you still love a lot of that stuff today.
Oh, yeah. And it's all about, there's a progression roadmap, if you will, just outlined, almost like a franchisee in the business world, right? It's, hey, if you hit X, Y, and Z, then you get this. And I like that. It's really simple, right? I got a checklist, and I just go through and knock stuff out, and ended up becoming really successful in Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. To the tune, I was actually one of the youngest Eagle Scouts in Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was 13 years old, and so I was basically done with Scouts from that point on, and just started cycling.
There's some research out there, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was like 80% of all CEOs, this was probably back in the 90s, had gotten to CEOs of Fortune 500 companies had become Eagle Scouts. But so there's a performance track record there, and being able to achieve it at 13, that's quite something.
I obviously missed out on something.
Yeah.
That is super cool.
And then ended up doing a lot of cycling.
And so
after
when you
that.
say cycling, what do you mean by cycling?
Just road races, crits, and criteriums of the velodrome. Yes. I worked at the velodrome and raced out there, and I loved it. It was great. Yeah, the high school that I was at, Tomball High School, had this U.S. Olympic training program. So depending on if you had coaches and X, Y, and Z, you're able to do correspondence stuff. So I actually graduated from the University of Texas with my high school diploma, which is the OSI officers in the Air Force later on doing my background check, had to fly to Austin to verify, which I think is funny.
That's something that you don't see every day.
Yeah. There was only about 12 students that graduated from that program because University of Texas spun it off. But it was a pretty cool time.
What did you learn with Scouts that allowed that to happen? Because, again, now there's youngest Eagle Scout, and then you're able to do something only 12 other people did. What's the correlation? What were the lessons that you had gotten that allowed that to happen?
That the high school thing was just right place, right time. I had a cycling coach that was a PhD in chemistry, and he was a professor, so it was easy to have him as my cycling coach, and then also he could check the boxes on the school stuff, and then all my schoolwork was correspondence through University of Texas. So I do have the best high school football team out there, bar none, right?
Yeah, but it sounds like you were driven at a young age, ambitious, and it also sounds like you were pretty competitive.
Yeah, I'm competitive and really goal-oriented. I love, hidden goals. Even though I have a lot of coaches that would say, hey, you got to stop and celebrate the wins. I'm not very good at that, but I just like achieving what I set out to. And that held me over for cycling. And then when I got out of cycling, 9/11 happened. I went in the military, and it held right to
Where do you think that competitiveness comes from? Did you learn it? Were you just born that way? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it was just, I don't know. I like to win and like to compete, and I like to know that I'm the best at something, right? I'm not the best at everything by any means of the word. There's a lot of things that I'm not good at, but I choose to focus my time in those areas that are really rewarding for me, right?
What a cool concept, right? You're good at winning. Learn how to win and are good at winning.
Yes, and knowing what you're not good in, and being okay with that, but really focusing where you can win and what makes you happy.
Yeah.
Because I think that's part of what they tell us all in life. Do what you like.
Yeah. Do what you like, and you never work a day in your life. But I think that's misused, and a lot of people try to do that and they end up being broke. I think it's a fine line. It was just by accident that I fell into the industry that I'm in and became passionate about not anything other than just building out the puzzle pieces, taking things that are unclear and being able to put everything together efficiently and optimize situations. And it's fun.
What do you think is that fine line between following your passion and being broke, or following your passion and being successful? If you had to give advice to the young people out there that, hey, I want to win and I want to learn how to win, I want to be successful, what do you think you'd tell them?
I think that's a pretty tough one. It's find something. If you had, say, 2 or 3 of your top things that you're able to do, and then just go and try a bunch of stuff and apply it across all types of fields, right? Unless you go to school to be a doctor, you're not going to be a doctor, right? Unless you go to school to be an engineer, you're not going to be an engineer. But otherwise, if you get a degree that's not like that, or you decide you're not going to go to school for a degree, you're going to go into the trades or build businesses. There's so many aspects. And the great thing I think about being an entrepreneur is if you're not good at it, you just hire somebody that is, right? And then you get the best of both worlds, because now you have somebody that's really good at the things that you're not good at. And that's where the magic happens.
You had the vision.
Yeah.
If you have the vision and can see the picture, then you can put the right butts in the right seats to help build that vision.
100%. Yeah.
Yes. And so you joined the military. Was that because of 9/11, or you had thought about it?
Never up until that point. I'd go to all the air shows. I grew up in Continental Airlines. My dad's a A&P mechanic by trade and got into management later on. But planes are in your blood. You can't help it. And I totally forgot what you're asking. What was the question?
Did you join the military?
Yeah. So to go back to that, I'd go to all the recruiters and talk to all of them back when I was, younger. And then I was like, no, I'm not doing this. I'm definitely not going in the military. And then, 9/11 happened. I remember my dad calling me. I was living in Austin at the time. And he'd say, hey, turn on the TV. And it was terrible. I still vividly remember all that and where I was and how it made me feel. And I went down and tried to enlist in the military, and everybody was already gone from all the recruiters' offices, and took my ASVAB and actually did really, that was most probably the best test I ever taken. I made like a 98 on it, and they're like, you can do whatever you want. That's when I went in. I went in a year after because they had to wait for tech schools to line up and everything like that. And I went as a communication, navigation, mission systems specialist. So I did all the communication, navigation equipment on all of your heavy aircraft, like your bombers and AWACS, C-130s in the Air Force.
What made you choose that? Was it your dad's background in mechanics?
Yeah. He was like, hey, you could do this, and then if you stayed in, you could stay in. If you didn't, you could get out and you could get a good job doing all kinds of stuff if you know this. And I got in, and I was in tech school for out of basic training and tech school, I was in for about 10 months. And 10 months when your country's at war and the president puts you guys on 3 shifts just in case the schoolhouse gets blown up. And I did nights after basic electronics school in Biloxi, Mississippi. I was up at Keesler Air Force Base, and I did nights. So I'd show up at 9 o'clock at night and be in school until about 6 o'clock in the morning. Then we'd go run PT. And, oh, man, it was a lot.
Yeah, those mid-watches are tough.
Yeah, and especially now you're talking about like AC, DC current theory and pulse theory for radar and UHF, VHF. I'm like, oh my gosh, what did I sign myself up for? But I got through it, and they had that dream sheet, right, of all the places you want to go. Being a young single guy from Texas, you always hear California and Florida. That's where all the ladies are, right? I was all right, fill out my dream sheet. And I remember I was in the day room watching the invasion of Iraq, and my chief calls me. All my buddies had already got their orders, and because of my security clearance was taking time to get processed, I was hanging out waiting for my orders. And chief calls me into his office. He's, Armagala, you got West Coast, buddy. You got way West Coast. And he hands me my orders for Elmendorf Air Force Base, Anchorage, Alaska. Which
yeah, that's a cold West Coast.
Currently outside in Wichita Falls at the time, it was about 110 degrees outside. It was August. Yeah, back then in the military, you would start your uniforms or your BDUs, which they don't do anymore, which is ridiculous. But it feels like you're walking around in a hairdryer in Wichita Falls. It's just hot. And I went on leave for about a week, and then I drove to Alaska. By myself, I loaded up every single thing that I owned, including my gigantic TV that most probably weighed like 150 pounds, and went driving. By the time I got to Wyoming, it was like in the mid 40s at night, and I had all the cold weather gear that they had issued me. I was freezing to death. And by the time I got up to the Yukon, about to go into Alaska, I was caravanning with a couple other guys that I'd met on the way. And I remember this lieutenant colonel came in. We were in a bunkhouse. It was like, it had 8 to 12 bunks in the back of this gas station in the middle of nowhere in the Yukon in Canada. And he's, hey guys, we got to go. There's a blizzard coming. I'm like, it's September. And being a Houston boy that didn't really ever see snow, I'd go rolling out in my flip-flops and shorts and a jacket on and see the biggest snowflakes that up to that point I was like, oh my gosh, this is insane. So that was how it all started. And
what'd you learn in the military? What did the military teach you, Eric?
Attention to detail. That's the one thing. The other is, if all you do is say do what you say you're going to do, you don't outperform it. If you say you're going to do this, you just do it. You're going to be ahead of 90% of people in the world.
Boy, isn't that true?
Yeah. If that's the only thing that you ever do, you just say, if I say I'm going to do it, then I do it. If you don't say you're going to do it, you don't have to do it. But if you say you do it, and you're going to be way ahead of everybody.
Yeah. I would say that's a lot of what I learned too. That attention to detail, I think, taught us and served us well.
Oh yeah.
In our careers.
100%.
I'm curious to hear about how you were able to make it through those difficult times where, again, you're shifting it sounds like, and both physical and mentally exhausting. Not everyone can handle that. Like, why were you capable of handling that? And what can people learn from you in being able to do it?
Yeah, and just to add to the last question about what I'd learned, I wasn't an awesome student growing up, ADD, dyslexic, and I'd failed an exam at avionics school. And the reason that you do these things when you're in the military, because you don't have a choice. I don't know. Yeah, this is the coaching I got from my chief. Calls me in the office, and when you go into your commander's office or your chief's office, when you're not in the best situation, you can't just walk in and say hi. You have to give a reporting statement and do this whole jazz, right? And so I go in, and he's like, Air McCullough, I'm going to do this for you. You get one more chance. If you fail this exam, I guarantee you're going to be standing somewhere sandy, hot, with a rifle next to a plane. I'm like, So he's basically, okay, you're going to become a cop, an Air Force cop, there's nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I signed up for. And I was like, okay, all right. And he assigned me this lady. She was probably in her late 60s. She worked with one of the civilians, or she was married to one of the civilians on base that was one of the teachers at our school. And she just sat and watched me study for 4 days. And to give backstory there, she was a teacher in England and taught all the GIs kids And so when they came back over here after she got married, she was basically just pick up like tutoring jobs. So the military hired her to basically help people that failed exams. So not that she knows anything about avionics at all, but she just sat there and looked at me while I was going through everything. I finally, stress got the better of me, and I freaked out on her because she just literally, I'd have to sit with her for an hour. I'm like going on my 4th hour with this lady. She hadn't really said anything. And then freaked out on her. And then she handed me a yellow pad. She told me that what I need to do is write down every single thing that I ever need to know for a test or anything like that. And once I write it down, then I'm good. That one piece of advice shifted the whole entire trajectory of my life.
So you still do that today?
Oh, yeah. And when I'm studying for a lot of exams, I'll have calluses all over my hands just from writing. I'll have each test is normally like 3 or 4 yellow pads full of notes and I don't really ever go back and reference it just because now I remember them.
I've seen a lot in research about the connection between brain and writing, and a lot of the kids today don't get that with the electronic age. But there is definitely a brain to hand movement that helps cement in that information. Yeah,
and then after getting out of the military, then when I got in my my given profession, there was always younger advisors that were around. And so while I was studying, I'd write everything down, and then I would teach basically what I learned. And that they always thought I was doing it for them, which I like to teach and help people out anyways. But it really just locked in, one, my ability to understand it because now I'm explaining it. And 2, it helped me be able to see what words worked with people that didn't know anything about it. So that way when I was communicated to a client, that it was a lot easier for the client to understand because I'd already scrubbed it with people that didn't know what I was talking about anyways. And I'd say that was the biggest thing coming out of the military. When the military set my goals, I made myself indispensable because at the time they were shipping everybody off to Iraq to drive 18-wheelers through Baghdad. And that's where everybody was dying. They were getting blown up by IEDs. And I was like, all right, I really don't want to do that. The only weapons training I ever had was shooting at a piece of paper at Lackland Air Force Base. I didn't feel that I was equipped to go into a war zone. I'm equipped to fix circuit cards and pull magnetrons out of radar RTs and get the planes up and running. And went in, became a CPR. I taught CPR for the squadron, self-aid and buddy care. I did every single thing that I could do to basically add value. And I basically did 3 jobs. For one airman, I covered a bunch of
I think there's
people.
something in there that I want to talk about and explore a little bit, because I think that's a key point. You don't just do one thing. You always looked at, how do I become better, or how do I serve someone more? And I see you do that today still.
Yeah.
But what's your mindset behind that on besides being indispensable? There's something innate in you that makes you want to do that.
At the time, it was I wanted to get step promoted. They have what they call airmen below the zone, where they take you from your E2 to E3 without any additional time. 6 months before I was supposed to go to my next rank, I was able to get it. My commander came in and gave me my next, took me up to senior, which was super cool. And then I ended up becoming Airman of the Year for our squadron. There's about 550 airmen. And I'm just checking off boxes. At the time, it was all about building a resume and just hitting different goals. And I guess it's still like that because I like being able to see all the different stuff I've been able to do and add to it. And
isn't that about learning?
Yeah. Oh, and learning is a prior managing director that I had would always say, if you're green and growing or ripe and rotting.
Oh, I like that. Repeat that again.
Yeah, you're green and growing or you're ripe and rotting. So you always need to have forward progress, right? And that's driven my mentality and my thought process of being a lifetime learner. And I think ignorance is bliss, right? And what I mean by that is when you don't know that you don't know. But as you learn more, the more you learn, the more you don't know.
Isn't that true?
And for me, it freaks me out. And it's this continuous quest to be better, to be able to have more impact on our clients and on the advisors that we're bringing in, so that in turn they can actually go out and basically duplicate my knowledge for all of the clients for the firm. And that's really exciting.
I think that's true of most entrepreneurs that I've ran into, is this desire to consistently be that green vine and learn and dig and constantly. Once you learn something, it's like it opened up another book.
Yep.
So now I need to go find that book and learn it.
Yep. 100%. And just talking to people constantly, just brainstorming on stuff. And that's what I love about what I do, is just strategically brainstorming and looking at a lot of different areas of planning, and just being able to bring it all together is exciting for me.
I'd love to hear about both of yours opinion on innovation, because you guys are not afraid to try new things, test things, try to figure things out. You guys are ahead of the curve in so many different ways. Where does that come from, and how do you keep going, and what have you learned, and what are the challenges with that?
Yeah, just innovation in general. I think Missy's out on the front with this podcast and everything else that I need to step up on. But innovation for us, from a technology standpoint and a knowledge standpoint, it's all about not being afraid to fail or fail forward. The other thing I always took from the military was, it's not about making the wrong move. That's not what's going to kill you. What's going to kill you is not moving at all. Inaction is not okay. And it's from day one in my firm, it's as long as you're moving forward and you're trying to do the right thing, and okay, maybe there was an error here, that's all right. As long as you fess up to it, we can fix it and we can move forward. No harm, no foul from that end. But it's when you try to cover it up, or you don't fess up to something that you messed up, which is unexcusable, right? But to mess up just means that we're actually trying, and we're trying to move forward, and we're trying to do better. And so from an innovation standpoint, it's the same thing. Especially when we went independent, I signed all kinds of contracts on technology and things like that. And it's because you have to have it, but new things constantly evolving. And so I just got to the point where I was like, man, I got all this stuff. I just canceled out, but I have to pay them for another 2 years. And so it's just this constant grind to find the things that work, and are always testing and trying to figure out what's, especially with the AI and automation and ways to use that. That's really our take.
Yeah, I think innovation stems from our need to learn and grow. But I think innovation for us as entrepreneurs is tied into the fact that we want the nugget. We're driven for the nugget. And then when we get the nugget, it's that competition. Yeah. I don't want to be left behind. I either want to be even or in front, but I don't want to be left behind. And if there's something new I can figure out that makes things better, then I'm going to jump forwards. And I'm just like you. I've spent a lot of money on stuff and looked at it and go, cancel, I'll just pay for that. But at least I now know what I didn't know and can move forwards. But I think it's that ultimate drive that makes you have to be careful with the shiny objects. And I've learned from, being in EOS, that it's good to have somebody to bounce those shiny objects off of versus running with all of them.
100%. And that's rocket fuel, if you've read Rocket Fuel.
Yes.
And in my firm, I'm the kind of visionary. And then our implementer is Alicia, who's our COO. And that's just the team that we've been able to build, having her kind of all right, you want to do all this stuff. We can't do all this stuff all at one time, but we'll pick something and just test it and try to implement it. I think we need those people in our lives to make sure that as entrepreneurs, we're all spastic from that end anyways. We're unemployable, as I like to say, is that entrepreneurs are unemployable people that are just driven and motivated to change or to make something better. And that's what we get excited about. Right?
Yes.
But that's not always good for all parts of the business.
Yeah.
So we got to have those team players.
Our employees don't appreciate that as much. They're like, oh my God, not another change.
Yep. 100%. 100%.
One thing I know about you guys is that you're also doing it for your clients, right? For the people that you're serving and that you're wanting to serve and wanting to make sure that they have. I hate to use the word best, the latest and greatest of everything, whether it's easier, whether it's more fun, whether it's more practical, whether it's more knowledgeable, but you're always doing things to help them. And we haven't talked enough about that, but I know that is ultimately in your heart as well.
Oh, yeah. Because at the end of the day, we don't have a business if we don't have clients, right?
Well,
and those relationships, really, you got to make sure that you nurture them and you take care of them. And that at the end of the day, if you're not growing, then you're not actually taking care of your clients.
Well,
Right?
I think it's
And,
also it's important for us to give our best,
Yeah.
and we have to feel like we're doing everything we can to be our best for the people we work for.
Yeah.
It's a drive in us. Status quo is not acceptable.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the excitement.
Yes.
Just to go through the motions every day, I'd jump off the building. Like, I need something new. I need to be able to look at it differently and talk to people about these things. And in my industry, it's constantly evolving. And that's, I think, what's really driven and kept me engaged. And it doesn't matter how long you're in the financial services industry, you're going to be learning nonstop. So while I was in the military, I was fortunate enough to meet my wife. And after 5 months, we were married. Like any good airman, I'm holding the line. I'm not trying to deviate. And so got married, and now we're coming up on 19 years in October, which is pretty wild. We were pretty young. We basically grew up together, which is really cool.
And
And
which
stayed
is
married.
amazing.
Yeah.
What a blessing.
Yeah, if she leaves, I don't know where we're going, but we're going somewhere. But yeah, I tried to get back in the military as a hospital administrator. I started my MBA, and they wouldn't take any of my prior service history into account, which was crazy. It was 2008. Job market wasn't super great. Met with some pharmaceutical companies and just felt like I just needed to take a shower after talking to these guys. They had no integrity. At least that was the vibe.
That's
They didn't
hard
have
sales.
integrity. And I just was really turned off. Then I met with the stock brokerage firm, and it sounded cool, but I don't know, still had that kind of questionable integrity. And then I ended up accepting a job with this Fortune 100 company, big insurance investment planning firm. And it just was a good fit. And so I said yes to a full-time contract September 15th of 2008. And I remember calling my dad, and I said, "Dad, I got a job." He's awesome. And this man is massively supportive. Both of my parents are super supportive. And my dad said, "Okay, great. What does it pay?" I said, "That's the best thing, Dad. Unlimited potential." It doesn't pay anything. And I was in the Air Force, so I was used to not getting paid anything. So it was all right. It was a smooth transition. But he told me, he's like, "Go home, turn on the TV, and give me a call back." I'm like, all right, turn on TV, the news. I call him back. When I flip on the TV, they have video of people walking around New York like in a daze. Lehman Brothers just crashed and went into bankruptcy the day that I said yes to the financial services industry. So, there's a theme here, right? 9/11 happens. I say yes to the military. The next calamitous event would be basically 2008, 2009. I get into the financial services industry, and then we went independent in July of 2020, right in the middle of COVID.
Wow.
But this constant theme.
There is a theme.
Yeah.
It is simply called, "It doesn't matter the circumstances, I make them."
Yeah. It's just as I've gotten older, it's gotten a little bit more finesse around the way I work. But before, up until 2018, it was just working myself to death. There's a whole bunch of hours in a week, and only working 40 is not.
I don't know what that's
Yeah.
like.
I used to joke with people we had hired, be like, "Look, this is only a part-time job. You get to pick. Is it 7 to 7? Is it 8 to 8, 9 to 9? You're only working half days here, right? You're only working 12 hours at a time. It's great. It's not a problem. You get to pick, right? We're really flexible there. But not being able to have a paycheck for a while was a little rough. Thankfully, student loans really helped Tia and I out because she was going to school. We just maxed those things out, and that was bad.
Would you advise that today?
Yes, because I'd say it's the best investment that we made in being an entrepreneur, even though this company that we work for pitched it as you're your own business, you're your own boss, right? 1099 kind of thing. But really at the end of the day, and we were fortunate enough there's 10,000 advisors. Our second year in the business, we were number 10. When out of 10,000 advisors, we're number 10 in a couple different products, and got a lot of exposure. So I'd meet with the executives, and they'd be like, all right, what do you want to do? And I'd map out my whole entire game plan and what I thought was most advantageous for clients. And they'd be like,
that's a nugget.
Yeah. They're like, oh, no, sorry, you can't do that. In 2018, the big differentiator that happened in my life there was my daughter was diagnosed with a brain tumor. And that really shook the foundation of just life, right? And you know that very well. And there's nothing that makes you feel worse than having zero control, because I'm not a doc. It was bad, but we got through it as a team, and being able to do the planning was pivotal in our success and our growth from that end. And then that really outlined exactly what was important to myself, what I now come to understand is really important to all of our clients. And sometimes they just don't know that it's important to them, right? Until you start having a conversation about, look, we want to make sure that you're set up for whatever your goals and objectives are, but don't do it at the cost of not living your life.
Correct.
Because life is really short, a lot shorter than I thought I don't even know how old I was back then, 37. And it just hit me square in the eyeballs, right? It's really about making sure that you can impact people, and that if we say we do something, that we do it, right? And having those contingencies and building a firm. And that's, really where Avid and why we went independent, because we weren't able to do and have the type of firm that we wanted in that big Fortune 100 company, because they want you to play in the same sandbox everybody is. And from a compliance standpoint, it makes it easier.
I'd like to go back for a sec, because I think it's really interesting. You put yourself in a very difficult situation a bunch of times, and you were able to get out of it through a lot of hard work and dedication.
Mm-hmm.
And then this happens to your daughter, and you can't use the skills, right? It's not about hard work and dedication. It is completely out of your hands.
Yeah.
So all your skill set is useless in that situation. So what sort of skill set and learning did you have during that time?
Yeah, we were really fortunate. After my first year in the business, I did something that people just shook their head. They thought I was failing out of the business. So I hit first 40, second 60, which is only about, call it 2% of this company ever hits as a new advisor. It's selling life insurance policies. It's where I grew up, is selling insurance as I learned everything. And then I basically dead filed all of my prospects, my prospective clients that I did a SWOT analysis and said, okay, there's this disability product. And I'd seen an article in the Wall Street Journal saying that disability insurance is the most complex financial product. And so I started learning all about definitions and actuarial assumptions and pricing and all of our other insurance policies are out there, who was a good fit for the policy that we had. And so I did filed everybody, and I cold called into the physician market, and it took about 5 months, and I didn't make a paycheck. I hold back in saying I defaulted on $47,000 of credit card debt, because coming out of the military, I was like, all right, I had no debt. And I said, I got to get a credit card just in case. And I'm pretty sure it was Tia. My wife, that said, let's get this just in case, because we're driving from Anchorage, Alaska down to San Antonio. But you don't know. Maybe we'll need it. All right. So get to San Antonio, get into a rental house, and I had an emergency. Need a new TV.
That's an emergency.
Got to go get that big projection screen TV. So I went and took care of that emergency, and everything was good. And then it just got to the point where just had all these credit card debt, and you don't pay them, and they compound. And so we worked it out. It didn't, whatever was owed was paid, right? They just froze everything and stopped charging me interest and all the penalties. And I just paid them off over the next, year and change, which was a learning piece. The other learning piece was the fact that I had no money. I was working at least 90 hours a week at this point for free, basically. Actually, I was having to pay because I had to pay rent in my office. And that's where Missy and I met, because we were in the SABOR building, the San Antonio Board of Realtors building, and just worked. And then May was the best month I'd ever had, and it was off to the races. That next 12 months, we ended up finishing number 10 in the company for disability insurance out of 10,000 advisors. And over the course of the 12 years that I was there, hit that multiple times, another products and planning fees, and we were in the top 3% in overall, basically, for the company for about a 6-year period.
Something about being broke drives you.
Yeah.
But I think this is important to say about being broke. And I know you well enough that I can say this. Being broke, we don't take advantage of people.
Oh, yeah.
We will stay broke if it means crossing the line on integrity.
Yep.
And I think that's a differentiator for a lot of us where integrity is everything. And we may not be able to put food on the table, but if that's in your best interest, then we're going to tell you that, and we won't put food on the table. We'll find another way.
Yep. And a lot of random acts of God happen. I'm not an overly religious person. I'm spiritual, but not overly religious. And I remember I got a check in the mail, and it was supposedly from some class action settlement. Literally, it was from a law office out of state, and it was like $2,000. To give you context, T and I went to Jack in the Box. I still remember this. We ordered a thing of monster tacos because it was the 99-cent. It comes with 2 of them. It was $1.07 with tax, and they gave us 2 cups for water. And I ate a taco, and she ate a taco. The cheapest meal that we've had since, $1.07. And at the end of the day, all you have is your word and your reputation. And this is the smallest big town, I think, that is out there, where once word gets out, you don't have a business anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
You
So
take care
your
of people.
reputation. Yep. And it's all about karma. Works both ways. I saw that in the military, that if you screw over people or what have you, it comes back to bite you in the ass. But I meet with people that aren't a good fit for our firm from a client standpoint, walking them through and making sure that they're in a better situation when they leave my office. And it comes full circle too, because you never know who somebody might know, or heck, I would want somebody to just spend a couple seconds if they had the knowledge just to help me
We should
they
all
could.
do that.
Yeah.
That's what the greater plan is. That's why God put us on this earth.
Yeah.
Is to give a hand up,
Mm-hmm.
not push someone down.
Yep.
Let's circle back, though. Max asked you a really important question I think's important to talk about, because not everybody just has an easy life. And let's go back to the situation with your daughter.
Yeah.
And you weren't in control.
Yeah. That was, I remember. So this is the thing, just to loop back around, and this is where my ADD comes in. Thank you, Missy. But to loop back around, I'd gone and done talks at what they call grand rounds, where you're talking with doctors in their residency and fellowship. I've gone and spoken at Johns Hopkins up in Baltimore on planning topics for physicians at Johns Hopkins University, and had clients all over the United States that are physicians. And so once we found out what it was, I started calling clients, and I'd already known the neurosurgeons that were going to operate on my daughter in the morning, just from being in the community. And I had one of my clients open up. We had emergency surgery. We're in the ICU. One of my clients opens up the curtain. It's 5:00 in the morning. They're getting ready, prepping McKenna for her first neurosurgery. And he's, Eric, I know I didn't return your call. This is insane, because I used to have one of those badges that I could get back into the doctor's lounges that I was able to finagle. And then he looked down at the chart and saw that my last name, that was my daughter. And I remember clear as day, he just turned around and said, "I'm your daddy's buddy. I'm here to take care of you." And he ended up canceling the rest of his day. He stayed with her, and she had to get brain mapping and all this other stuff because they needed to do another big neurosurgery. And it ended up being that wasn't the best place for her. And then I had a conversation with a bunch of different docs, and it talked to over 27 doctors between 9:00 at night and 1:30 in the morning. And they all referred me over, called one of our clients that was the head of pediatric neuroradiology at Texas Children's. And she told me about this Dr. William Whitehead. And then I got that referral from about 6 other people. And the last guy, so I called one of my buddies who's also an advisor, in Ohio, and he has tons of doctor clients. So he was calling his docs, and I was calling my docs. And the last guy I talked to was a pediatric plastic surgeon at LA Children's. So he just got out of a case. It was like 10:30, 11:30 at night there. And he's like, Eric, there's a guy at Texas Children's. If my kids had the same thing, I'd pack him up on a jet and I'd fly him out to Houston. That's the only guy that I'd ever let do anything. And so I'd heard this guy's name like 6-7 times. And it just so happened to be that he just published a neurosurgical article with 2 other docs, and that's his specialty. I didn't have control, but the control that I had was advocating like crazy and prospecting and getting telephone numbers just like we would in trying to grow our business, was asking for referrals, asking for who do you know that X, Y, and Z, what's a good contact number? I don't want the hospital's telephone number. Give me a cell phone number. And I'm writing it down and I'm calling them, right? And
I think that's important. I want to just hit on that for a moment, because when I lost my son and went through his ordeal, and then I had to go through it again with Jessica, you have to learn to be an advocate.
Oh.
And you have to treat it like a job.
Yep.
And you don't just accept the first thing you hear. You investigate.
Yep.
You keep investigating, and then you have people that you run into that you trust.
Yep.
Because you know they have integrity. So for anybody out there that ever has another one in their life that's
Yep.
ill or sick, it doesn't just have to be a child.
Yep.
I think it's really important to know that you just don't take stuff at face value and
Yep.
walk back out the door. You just don't accept it, and you keep digging until you have to accept it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
mean, going through this with my dad right now, and you just gotta, it's not that all the doctors, I believe, are doing what they believe is in their best, in your best interest, not their best interest, but in your best interest. Their medical practices, does that mean they're practicing on you? I don't know. You got to get confirmation and make sure that you find the best people. Because I do believe we have the best medical care here in the States, but it's based on finding it.
Correct.
Right.
Digging.
Yeah.
I was wrong with my question. It sounds like your skill set actually helped save the life of your daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And it was just it was wild. The 2 neurosurgeons were talking about this procedure that, they needed to do. And I remember having this out of body experience and going, is this what my clients, is this what they hear? Like when they're saying, I've totally lost you. I don't know what in the world you're talking about. I had this kind of out of body experience, and I don't know, it was military. Yeah, just get numb to emotions when you're in that. And it's just give me the facts. And I remember not wanting to walk back in with McKenna and Kinsley, my youngest at the time, and my parents, and Tia's parents were in the ICU room, and just we needed a second. So we went into the stairwell, and Tia was crying, and I was just trying to stay strong, and I had the craziest nosebleed. It was like literally, I'm glad the blood vessel burst in my nose and not in my brain, because that would have been really bad. But it was insane. It was like somebody got attacked in the stairwell.
I think that's a matter of focus.
Yeah.
Because we are emotional, but it's we'll hold the emotions to get to where we need to go.
Yeah.
And that even comes back to failing forwards. Taking those moments, and where other people fall apart, we'll keep driving.
Yeah.
We want the answers. Where do we need to go? What do we need to do?
Yep. And so they came. Texas Children has this awesome group of medical professionals that fly around in this private jet all over North America and into South America, and they're called the Kangaroo Crew. So kangaroos, the mama kangaroo puts the babies in the pouch. So they put the babies in this jet and fly them up to Houston, and they packed in Tia and McKenna into the jet. She had a port out of her head. We called it a straw for her. And she had this straw that was draining off her cerebral spinal fluid because the tumor was blocking it. And they loaded her up, flew her out there. She was at Houston for 35 minutes. She was in the hospital. It was crazy. And that was just it was awesome, but it was really scary at the same time. And that whole entire process, she ended up having so she had another neurosurgery the next day. And then her last one was 12 hours long. And she had to learn how to walk and talk and all that stuff all over again. So we never left the hospital. We, from the time we drove over, or they flew over, we just camped out at the hospital the whole entire time.
Did you learn, I'm curious, did you learn from that to think a little differently about how many hours you worked and where your priorities were?
Yeah. My problem is that I don't feel like what I do is work, which is good and bad. It's good because I love it and it's fun, but it's bad from the standpoint of just that disconnecting of work with family. And I think as entrepreneurs and as any successful business person, that's always a struggle, right? It's what I learned in going through all this stuff, the biggest piece, going back to setting my goals, and they sent us home for a week after her second neurosurgery, and they said, go home, hang out with family, and just love on your daughter, which is never what you want to hear. And I need to assemble the exact team that I want for the surgery. And this surgeon is known for these massively long, like 20-hour long neurosurgeries. And so we went and we drove back, and McKenna was 7, about to turn 8. And she knew exactly what was going on. And it didn't hide the fact that, you might not wake up from this, right? Mm-hmm. Which, man, but just, we pulled up in Tia's car, and getting her to get out of the car to walk into the hospital to face her mortality, just the fear in this 7-year-old's eyes was palatable. And it just made such a impact on me. So I had actually, after we got through everything, I was sitting down at my desk this December timeframe, and I'm doing my planning for 2009. Right. And I'm thinking, I'm using this workbook, and one of the questions was, what would you do right now if you weren't afraid? I'm like, oh, this is dangerous. This is dangerous. I'll just write it down. It's not anything that I got to do. And so I wrote down, I was like, oh, I'm not a fan of heights at all. Not at all. We were on a cruise. I don't even like going on the balcony because I feel like I'm throwing myself off or something. Anyways, so I'd go skydiving, and ended up booking a trip out to San Marcos, and Tia and I went skydiving. And the strength was, hey, if your daughter can face her mortality at 7 years old, you have to stop being a wimp, and you need to push yourself through this. I still don't like heights at all, but it was a growing experience of saying, okay, hey, I can do this, right? If I needed to, I can be strong just like my daughter, right? And she's just, both of my daughters are just there's a lot to be learned from, I think, these little ones, right? Just the way that they go through life with just excitement and everything's new. And I think if we can keep that same zest, then we're in a lot better situation.
Yeah, I think those moments, I think we learn something really deep inside of us when you walk with a child, and when they put them on that cart and roll them back, that they may not be here tomorrow.
Yep.
And if you ever had time stand still, that is the truth of time standing still. That moment will be blazed in your memory forever.
Yep.
Of what that felt like. And I think that helps us as entrepreneurs and with our drive to remember that we ought to slow down and enjoy the moments.
Yeah.
And not constantly be going, what do I need to do next? That those moments are so precious because they can be taken away from us.
Yeah.
And without experiencing that, those of us that have a lot of drive and like what we do,
yeah,
we could do it 24/7.
Yeah.
And we have to tell ourselves, you can't do it 24/7. There's people that love you that want you too. And it's learning those lessons.
Yeah, before my youngest was born, I was finishing up my boards for my CFP, and I remember McKenna asked Tia, "Is Daddy going to sleep at our house tonight?" And I was like, okay, I need to be a little bit more I need to get over here.
Yes.
And come home in the evening because I was working 7 in the morning, and I'd get home at 10:30 at night. And I did that for 6 months. And in 2018, I shifted it from working at night to waking up at 2:30 in the morning and going to the office and studying all morning until 9 o'clock. And then from 9, I'd work until 5:30. And then no matter where I was at 7:30, 8 o'clock, I was passed out. If it was on the couch, if it was in a chair, I was asleep. But yeah, I think those are the things that really, we all see the world through the lenses that we, either our occupation or just things that have colored our life. And I think that's really helped me in working with people that are really just trying to make sure their family's taken care of, make sure that they have the one question that everybody wants to know: am I going to be okay?
Yes.
Am I going to be okay? Do I have to pay more taxes, or am I making enough in my portfolio for X, or if something happened to me, is there enough insurance for my family? Or all of these different things, it all boils down to that one question. And that's really what we solve, is that one question: am I going to be okay? But having that shift to saying, going through all that, and that April was the first time that I made April of 2009, the first time that I made a conscious decision not to do that end of year push for my fiscal year. And it was the first time, and it sounds cheesy and crazy when you say it out loud, but that was the first time that I didn't actually hit a goal that I had written out. So I write my goals down every single day, and I write down 2-3 paragraphs as if the goals already happened every morning. And I've done that for a long time. And it was a catastrophic mental breakdown, basically. Oh, hold on. Because at the time I was wrapped up as I was that guy that was this type of performer. And now I still did awesome that year. And every year we've had a better year than the next year, than the last year. But it was a good way to say, okay, hey, what's really important? What do we need to do? And from that point on, it was, I don't want to ever sit back and think in my life that, dang, I wish I would have done this, or I should have done that. And it sent me on this quest of just trying to experience everything to the fullest way possible.
It's really interesting because your daughter had to face her worst fears. You faced your worst fears as a father. Then you face your worst fears as a human in your personal mortality and heights. But then you also put yourself in a position where you faced your worst fears about your ego of not being the guy that always accomplishes his goals and wins. So you actually did it, right? Like, you consistently face those fears, and you're helping your clients face those fears consistently too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, hopefully they never have to go through any of that stuff, right? I think Missy and I can attest that's not something that you want on your
life
as
resume.
A parent. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But yeah, I don't think that there's a reason that all this stuff happens. And does that make me a more compassionate person? Before, never cry. I could tell that story and break down in a split second. You think about actors and they can make themselves cry, and you're like, how do you do that? I never could figure that out until I went through this. And now literally I can, if I'd said a couple of different stories that prompted some different visions in my, I would just be bawling. And that, you guys don't need that. A wild thing.
So let's talk a minute about, because you went off and opened your own business. Mm-hmm. What were for those of us that do that, what were some of the struggles that you think important to think about when you do that?
Yeah, I think for myself, one of the good things is that in going independent, we already had a business, more or less. We just didn't have complete control. And from a fiduciary standpoint, we had a securities license in order to work with the firm and sell variable products. But as a fiduciary, you don't have those, right? And I didn't want the complexity and the BS from compliance of having to say, I picked this product because of this. I didn't want any of that. So we dropped all of our securities licenses, and now we're just registered with the SEC as an investment advisor, right? So we only give advice. We don't get any commissions, and we only charge fees. So we're agnostic. We don't care across the board, but as long as it's in the best interest of the client, that's the only mark. But I would say that it takes some intestinal fortitude.
It does.
Right? the unknown, and it takes a really good group of other team members, right? I don't believe anybody can do anything 100% on their own.
Right.
And if I sat here and said it was all me, it would be ridiculous, right? Because would not be anywhere close to the truth. I just said, hey, we're moving, we're leaving, and we're going to build this exactly the way we want it, and bring on the professionals that are going to be able to impact our clients. And so intestinal fortitude, make sure that you have a good team of advisors and bankers and things of that nature. And fortunately for us, we have a really strong relationship with our bankers as well, and attorneys that helped us draft everything and give us guidance around things to think about and things to look at. I would say just in starting out, it's just about knowing that it's going to get better.
Yeah.
It's going to get better.
But it's like skydiving.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally stepping off a cliff and knowing no matter how the fall goes, you're going to land. And you're going to fix whatever goes wrong in the landing and keep moving forwards.
Yeah. It's all about keeping moving forward. It's just about that forward progress. And I remember a phone call where I was driving, but I got a phone call from Missy. She got a letter from the firm that we left because we couldn't reach out to everybody. All right. And Missy's, I got this letter. What's going on? And she had just previously went out on her own and started her firm. And I remember talking with Missy, and she was like, this is fantastic. I knew that's what was happening. All right. And so she came over. She was one of the first on board. And fortunately for us, 100% of our clients moved over, which I think speaks to what we do and what we want to do and what we want for our clients. But having a really strong team and failing forward.
So why did they all decide to stay with you guys? What is it about what you do or how you do it that is attractive to people?
Yeah, I just lose sleep over all of our client stuff. Right? This is not a. Think back to all of our clients that help McKenna and myself and my family. We can't half-ass these things, right? Like, they were there for me, and I'm going to be there for them. And I think a lot of our clients feel that, right? Is that I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna get comfortable. You're green and growing or ripe and rotting. And being a lifetime learner and being passionate and goal oriented around this, I think that's. Yeah, I don't have all the answers, but I'll find them. But I'll keep on striving to find them, and I'll be the first to let you know if I don't know something, right? But I'll find the answer, and I think that just comes across.
And do you work with people that already have advisors and they just decide to look for a better one, or do you work with a lot of people that have never really had the support and help, and then they choose you as the first group?
It's a combination. As we've learned more and we do a lot more complex planning, a lot of estate planning and business planning, exit planning, stuff like that. It's evolved from the young families that just need some term insurance and open up a Roth to corporate 401ks and pension plans and using trusts and gifting. And so in those areas, it's everybody's got an advisor already, right? And if they don't have an advisor, then normally there's either a ton of work to do and they're just not efficiently set up, it happens here and there. But normally it's, hey, I got an investment guy who just does my investments, or I got an insurance guy who just does my insurance. I got a CPA, does my taxes. I got a estate planning attorney. But one thing, and as we built the firm, what we really look to do is create a board for family, right? Where we can be their CFO and their sounding board, and we communicate with all the advisors. That's the biggest leveraging point, is our clients not having to play the telephone game, is that we have open communication with their CPAs and attorneys, and we make sure everybody's on the same page from a planning standpoint, which when we're talking about lots of complexity, it really drives to have the plan implemented. So it's both, I'd say. And the nice thing is that in being able to grow the firm, and years ago, I would never have been able to be a leader that would be able to mentor somebody that I would compete with, because I was too competitive. But as I've gotten a little bit of, let's say, gray hair, as my hair's fallen out and I've gotten older and wiser, I've learned that truly the way that I'm going to have the most impact is to teach other people and to be able to have scale. We have a guy, Dan, on our team that's been with us coming up 5 years in July, and he started when he was 21 and got his MBA and CFP and all this education, and just pouring into him and seeing him grow. So he's helped a lot of our clients, and younger clients and older clients alike. So that way I can consistently just build and go into those areas of that's more complex, but because I'm doing it 24/7, it sometimes just doesn't feel complex. And I have to take a step back and say, hey, Eric, this isn't a common language for everybody. I can be more the strategist, and we have other advisors at the firm that can help out the younger, maybe not established clients.
It just sounds like you've got a group with a lot of experience.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really cool is people that get to know you can understand that your drive to win is in their best interest because you want them to win, and you have a culture of winning inside your organization. It's not someone that's just going to be okay doing an okay job. It's going to be a bunch of people that are wanting to win them over consistently and win in whatever terms they define as winning. And
Yep.
You're going to be pushing for that, and your team's going to be pushing for that. So
Yeah.
definitely I can see where a lot of that success comes from.
Yeah. And that's what makes it fun.
I think ultimately, too, Eric, you guys are amazing at connecting. Just like we do in our job,
Mm-hmm.
we connect people into meaningful relationships through real estate.
Yeah.
That's what you guys do in the financial world.
Yeah.
And in helping mastermind that whole body plan, here's the person you need. We don't do this part, but they do it. And they know when you say, go see this person, that person's going to take care of them just like you take care of them.
100%. Yeah. Because and I make sure that all of our COIs, all the people that we have relationships with, is that if you send somebody over to me, it's just, I'm a reflection of you.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa. And the people that we have formed relationships with over the last 16, 17 years in doing this are at the top of their game, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's really cool to be able to work with other people that, sit and talk to the client and be like, hey, look, I'm not the best person for this, but here's another person in our industry that's going to be suited for X, Y, and Z, that's actually giving up their ability to work for the client in order for the client to have the best outcome.
That's right.
And
what's best for them.
Yeah. And I'm really proud of that network that we built just because we all have that same type of mentality, right? And we just want the best for everybody because it comes full circle.
It does.
And so if I do a good job for you, we haven't done any type of marketing, any type of outbound sales or anything like that since we went independent. And everybody calls in, or it's an introduction from one client, and it's just been organic. And we have clients from Washington State, California to New York and Florida and everywhere in between, which I'd say is a really cool thing about an outcome of the pandemic. Before we were constrained geographically to have the best advisors, and to have the best outcome would mean that you would need really good advisors in your area. But now we're not constrained to a geographical area. We can work with people all over the place, and that's really cool. Right.
It is.
And it's allowed me not to be away from my wife and kids. Right. Because every night since McKenna was born, my youngest, who's about to turn 14, we still read books every single night. And we have a library. I think Tia had our nanny count all of them during COVID, and we had like 1,100 kids' books. So we have, which is, it's one of the things that kind of makes me sad as my kids are growing up. So I used to, whenever we would travel, we would find those little bitty bookstores and that are just mom and pop bookstores. And I'd always go through the kids' books. And so I got a stack of kids' books that are just awesome. I love them. They're my go-tos. I still hand them out to people. Even you could be full grown person, and I'll be like, here's a kid's book. And this one is awesome. This, is, there's one, what is it? This is going to drive me crazy, but it's what would you do with an idea? Have you read this
I
kid's
have
book?
not.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to write that down.
I'll send it to you.
Okay. I'll read it.
And it's such a good book, and it tells a story about this little kid that had an idea, and everybody bashed him for his idea. And it's basically the entrepreneur story, right? Hey, I want to do this. Don't do that. That's stupid. And the kid throughout the story said, I felt shame and I just hid it away. But my idea stayed with me and it got bigger and bigger. And he talks about so my passion for it. And then one day it came to life. And the theme of the story at the end, this is, I'm going to mess it up, but it was like basically ideas change the world.
Amen.
And that's the message that really, I think every entrepreneur goes out with a thought process of how can we better this widget, or how can we better this process? How can we better this experience? And that's what drives us, right? Because there is a better way, right? And being people that are driven to look for that outcome and deliver it to our clients is the differentiator. Right. And it's fun. And I love those kids' books. And I got a stack of them in my office, and people are most probably like, Eric's crazy with his kids' books again. But I think sometimes we gotta read those kids' books and remember what's actually important.
They keep the concepts simple and to the point.
Yeah.
Eric, how can people find you? What website, phone number, email?
Yeah.
How can they find you?
So our website's Avid Wealth Partners, or avidwp.com for wealth partners. You can reach out us there. You can give us a call on our phone number. You guys post it up somewhere on the screen or what have you, but I don't have my phone number on there. But yeah, reach out to us. Missy can connect us. And if we can be a resource, that's how we start everything. When we sit down with clients or prospective clients, the first meeting is just to figure out if we jive, right? Because if I like you and you like me, there's no reason that we shouldn't work together. But if you said, Eric, I don't like your face, and you're not very nice, the last thing I want to do is see you for the next 30 years, and I'm sure you wouldn't want to see me.
Maybe they just don't like to win.
Yeah, exactly. And after that, then we get down to whatever goals and objectives and what the client wants us to do. But it's all about making sure that we drive, because at the end of the day, we can't work hard for our clients if I used to call it the telephone test. If I see your number pop up on my caller ID and I don't want to answer it, you can't be a client anymore. Right? Yeah. Because we can't be passionate about having the best outcomes for you if we can't stand you. And so that's where it starts. Going to work and talking to clients is fun because I love all of them. They're awesome. There's not one of them that I'm like, because if there was, then we're fortunate enough not to have to work with everybody. Right? And we don't tolerate people talking to my team as if they're just staff people, because they're not staff people, they're team members. And so we haven't had issues for a long time, which is great.
Awesome. We're coming towards the end of our podcast. So before we close, is there a big lesson you've learned, something that you routinely tell people that you'd like to share with our audience? And then we'll let you just finish us off with that today.
Yeah, two pieces. One, have a goal. If you don't have a goal, you're just going to be adrift, and not really ever know what you're going to be able to do. So having goals, you're going to push yourself. I'm about coaching, right? Just like Tiger Woods. Back in the day, I'm not a golfer at all. I actually do not like golf. I don't understand the concept, but I do like to drive around the golf cart on the golf course. Very coachable. And one of my coaches early on and intermittently, even up to today, is a guy named Jason Selk. He was the performance coach for the St. Louis Cardinals when they won their last two World Series. And he does a lot of coaching professionally and with the Olympic team. And he has a concept called RSF, which is Relentless Solution Focus. And RSF, what he had taught me is that as humans, we go to what our reptilian brain pushes us into, right? Which is the fight or flight. Ask three questions. Is it going to kill me? Can I sleep with it? Can I eat with it? Can I eat it? And that's the only three questions that portion of your brain asks. So we're always thinking about like negative stuff, right? And you can look at the news, right? You get stuck in news cycles because it's all negative, and you're afraid to. One of those things, is it going to kill me? It's not a question of, oh, look, it's beautiful outside. You'd be like, oh, okay, that's not a big deal. I'm going to flip the channel. But, oh my gosh, it's a hurricane. It's a week out. It could kill you. And you're like, oh, I'm sitting here for 12 hours watching it. So going and using RSF, it's one question, right, that you have to ask yourself. And I do this multiple times a day when I feel myself in this kind of negative mind space, or what he calls problem-centric problem-centric thinking is ask yourself the question, what can I do right now to better my situation? Just asking that one question takes you from thinking about the problem to thinking about the solution. And if you can stay in the solution thinking, you can get through your problems. But if you're focused on the problems, get bigger and can just drag you down. But if you're always thinking about the solution, even if the solution that you come up with is not right, it's a step in the right direction, right? You can always ask that again. What can I do right now? Early on in my business, what can I do right now is pick up the phone and call more people. Go and talk to more people. That will fix everything, right? And so I just go back to that even today is, okay, what can I do right now to better the situation? Even with McKenna, what can I do right now to better get on the phone, talk to people, and try to, figure out what's next? So RSF, there's a great book on it too. He's an awesome guy. You can follow him on all of his social media stuff, and he talks about this stuff all the time. So I would definitely do that. And constantly asking yourself, how can you improve your current situation, no matter what that situation is?
Thank you so much. That's some powerful advice for all of us, and to remember it and to continue to move forward.
Thank you, Eric. I think you're a gift to the entrepreneur because you've been there, you've done it, and those last few words I wrote down too. I'll go read that book as well. Yeah. Because I think that's a true statement that we all need to focus on. And that is part of what sets us apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, we actually just found out we hit the Inc. 5000 for the third year in a row as one of the fastest growing companies in the United States. So we're super proud of that. And that's just a testament to just trying to find the best solutions for our clients. It's exciting. I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully this can be impactful to somebody.
It
Same
certainly
here.
will.
Thank you. Appreciate having you.